Okay, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all members of the Housing and Communities Overview and Scrutiny panel, officers, members and any members of the public and press in attendance at today's meeting of the 17th July 2024. Welcome to those who may be watching the meeting live on YouTube. I'm Councillor Steve Clark, Chairman of the panel. I would now like to hand over to Democratic Services to read the housekeeping note.
Thanks. Please note this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. Please can those in attendance use your microphone when speaking and switch it off when you've finished. Please turn any mobile devices to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. If the fire alarm rings, please can everyone leave the room immediately using the nearest fire exit. Do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point located at the bottom of the car park by the garages.
Thank you. Please could members introduce themselves during the meeting if not already introduced by name. I understand we've received apologies from Councillor Mbala.
Yes, that's correct.
And there are no other apologies. Item 1, to approve the minutes of the meetings held on the 20th of March and the 13th of May. Everybody happy with those minutes? Thank you. I will sign those in due course. Item 2, any declarations of interest from members? No, thank you.
Community grants. If I was a member of an organisation that was intending to be applying for a community grant, would that be a declaration of interest?
I don't think that's a problem.
No, it's on the procedure and process, so that's fine.
Okay.
It's always wise to check though. Okay, item 3, public participation, we have none, which moves us on to item 4, the CCT proposed expansion across the district and the recommendations on page 4, which is to note the Cabinet recommendations. I think this is good news that we've got all those additional ones, but I'll go straight to Brian to explain exactly what the good news is.
Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully members have had an opportunity to review the report. Members will be aware of the Council's corporate priorities in terms of the commitment to reduction of crime and disorder, and particularly the fear of crime. Within that, additional funding was allocated for the expansion of the current CCTV programme. The existing network, if you like, has been in place since 2002 with 56 public space cameras. And they have covered certain towns and villages around the forest very well for over 20 years. But obviously since that time, things have changed, populations, crime trends and so forth. And actually the outlay, the environment is changed across the forest. So it was quite timely to review that. And from that, we have identified 4 new towns in particular who actually are not served by the current system. And to support the Council's additional funding, I've also managed to secure additional funding through the Home Office Safer Streets Fund, particularly targeting rural communities and violence against women and girls. So again, a timely contribution, which has enabled us to really kind of focus on the crime data of where these cameras will be best served. There has been extensive consultation with identified towns and parishes, particularly where the crime data was evident, where the gaps in analysis of crime and coverage was evident. Following individual consultation on both preference and then overlapping on that in terms of crime and disorder and the benefits of those cameras, overseen by Councillor Pill, we have been able to identify, as I say, 21 different locations for additional cameras. We have the current network is what we call a fibre optic network, and because a number of these areas are more rural, particularly in terms of infrastructure around them, to minimise the costs associated with this, we have trialled alternative methods in terms of the 4G camera, in terms of how technology has moved forward in comparison to the current system. We've trialled cameras in Fording Bridge, and I'm happy to invite members if you ever want to see the difference in clarity. There actually is, we're not seeing any difference in terms of footage, in what we call camera lag and so forth when we move the camera around or zooming in. So actually that simplicity of being able to kind of deploy a camera in a rural community can be replicated across the forest within those areas. It is envisaged that following Cabinet's approval and obviously members' views here this evening, there will hopefully be an anticipated underspend from the allocated budget that was initially set aside. With that ability of underspend, the second proposal is to upgrade the remaining analog cameras, which will then mean the whole network is digitalized camera. What that also will do is, alongside that, is actually reduce the annual cost of the network feed. Because currently, to try and explain the way the network works, each camera essentially has an analog line, and each analog line comes in at a cost, if you like, for rental of that line. When we look at digital channels, I can force 6, 7, 8, 9 cameras down one digital channel, and a digital channel is not too different in terms of cost of price to an analog. So there really are real opportunities for us here following the completion of this works to reduce the ongoing revenue costs to the district council and to make sure and make sure that the system is future for many more years to come. Chairman, I'm happy to take questions because I appreciate there's a lot within the report.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Personally, I'm very pleased to see this this report, especially since New Milton, and I represent Milton Ward, gets 4 cameras, of which 2 are in my ward. So that's good news personally from and of course Councillor Davis's ward as well. So not that we had any influence on receiving those cameras, but exceptionally good news. Kate, you've got a point to raise?
Actually, it's just a comment, really. I just thought it was a brilliant bit of work, and especially the consultative attitude towards it, because I think in the past, Canada felt that they didn't really have an awful lot of say in what was going on. So I think it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Hilary.
How can people in, for example, Lyndhurst High Street, if a trader has shoplifting or something go on, can they contact the council to get the CCTV?
It's a question I get asked quite a lot. Now, without answering the question directly, if I can go around the long way, okay, I'm currently working with a dedicated area in the forest around how we can improve shop watch schemes and how we can make sure that the cameras are reacting. So to explain how the control room works, we actually have a live police radio in there. So we monitor what's activities coming over the channels anyway, and we're also asked for assistance directly from police control. So I think the first thing I would always say to people is to report incidents immediately to the police, because in doing so, the police we will then hear that through the airwaves. In terms of contacting us directly, it's a multifunctional room, and if I expanded that offer across all of it, it would really clog up the systems, if I'm really honest with you. I'm not saying no, but what I'm saying is I'm looking at methods of how we can improve that.
Yeah, I'm just conscious that at the moment, I know for Lyndhurst, most of the traders don't bother to report it because they've never had a response from the police. So they just go to each other's shops asking if anybody's got CCTV, whereas I know these are going to be in really good positions. So I'll just go back to them and say that they have to report it because you guys will pick it up that way, because at the moment they just don't bother.
And Chairman, if you're happy, I think if I can reassure you, one of the things we did particularly during Fording Bridge, Fording Bridge, as you're aware, has had no camera coverage. And thank you for the comments that were made earlier in terms of consultation. And to kind of build upon that, one of the key things I did within Fording Bridge, which we will replicate at each location, is we will engage with the local community and the business community. We invite them to a public meeting. We will show them the cameras actually in use so that we can explain what the processes are. And I think from that, within Fording Bridge, we've managed to achieve what it is you're referring to in Lyndhurst. So I don't think it's unachievable, but it's making sure that we continue with that engagement process town by town as we expand the network.
That's a good point to raise there, Hilary, and I think Brian will follow this up in his usual professional way, because it's important that we actually get the process of making sure the cameras are pointing in the right direction absolutely right. And if too many phone calls come in, we're swiveling all over the place, and we don't want that, do we? Okay. In which case, it doesn't appear that we have too many issues that we wish to highlight or take to Cabinet. Are we happy to take the report to Cabinet as is? Okay, in that case, that's what we'll do. Okay. We now move to item 5, review of the Revenue and Capital Community Grants Scheme. Members, you will have received an email that I sent out on Monday via Karen, asking you to pay extra attention to the subject of this report, because we've got 7 potential recommendations here, which I'm hoping that by having given good and due regard to the report, we can minimise some of the discussion. Otherwise, I think 7 recommendations to work through could keep us here for quite some time. So I'll go over to Ryan to go through the report and the various options that we're requested to make.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Ryan Stevens, Service Manager for Revenues, Benefits and Customer Services. As Chair said, this is a detailed report reviewing our annual community grant programme as recommended by Cabinet early in 2024. So our community grant process is an annual programme where we look to support a range of organisations from across the district who support lots of people through different means, right through from mental health, those impacted by the cost of living, so a whole range of organisations across the district. We have 2 strands, the revenue strand, which is supporting organisations with their ongoing day-to-day costs. And then we have the capital strand, which are one-off construction or refurbishment costs. So they're the 2 strands that we do with a budget each year to allocate funding towards. 7.1 details the current process, so it outlines how applications are currently made, what the process is. It goes to task and finish group presentations are had with all of the applicants, and then through to scrutiny panel. Last year we had an unprecedented number of applications, over 45 applications. That involved lots of administration, and also there's the expectation of the applicants as well. Obviously there's only so much money to go around, all of very good applications, and it was difficult decisions to be made. So looking at the administration, we look to take a review of the current scheme, so looking at both. In doing so, section 9.1 looks at the eligibility criteria for the revenue grants. So what we're looking to do there is just have some clarity and confirmation on what those key eligibility criteria are. Section 10 then goes on to look at the options. So I've tried to provide a range of options to consider. So option 1 is just minor amendment to the existing scheme, so leaving things as they are, with taking into consideration those points in 9.1. Option 2 is a multi-year project and 1-year awards, so a bit of change. What that involves is giving organisations longer term grants rather than just the 1 year, to provide them some security, some financial knowledge of what they're going to be receiving. Task and finish group are still to meet applications, and we'll be using a matrix to put applications into one of 3 bands, A, B or C, depending on their score. And scoring will involve things like, how do they meet our corporate objectives? Is it value for money? What type of organisation and services they support? Option 3 is the multi-year project and 1-year awards, so similar to 2, but with the scrutiny panel making recommendations, not the task and finish group. So applications are scored, they will go to scrutiny panel to make recommendations. Again, a slight variation. Option 4 is the same as the previous 2 options, with just some additional, or part of the overall budget, a portion of that will be held just for other projects that we might want to support throughout the year. So sometimes we might get asked, the window's closed, or is there a budget or funding for this particular project? Again, this might help support those type of requests. Option 5 is purely looking at project-based, so not looking at that ongoing running cost support, just purely direct grants for specific projects. 2 windows a year with officer or members making those decisions. Option 6 is a community lottery funded scheme. where the members of the public can buy a lottery ticket. Part of that purchase of that ticket is used to support and fund the organisations, or a community administered scheme, which is option 7, whereas basically we're giving that money to a different group to administer the revenue grant scheme. We've also looked at the capital grants as well. And what we're seeking there is just clarity and confirmation on what the eligibility criteria is and what those principles are, and a slight change in process. So again, applications will be scored using a matrix, and the task and finish group making those recommendations. So we will not be seeking applicants to come in and provide a presentation. We've also put a paragraph in there about updating and improving the website. So often we get asked questions like, what other grants are available? Where else can I go? So again, using our webpage, we can signpost and put information on there about other grants that we know, signpost to Community First Wessex, who we work with as well, to promote grants and support to organisations. So that's a brief overview of the report, Chair. Happy to take any questions or discuss on
thank you. I know we're going to get questions on this. Before I go to the members, I was on the task and finish group for the seal allocations where the matrix system was used, and we have 4 days set aside for that with using the matrix system. I think Janet was on that task and finish group. It worked so well that we were finished by lunchtime. In fact, it was, we only had to come back via Teams on the Thursday to just ask for the clarification, because it does enable, that sort of matrix system enables us to pick up on specific points, clarify them, ask for clarification, and then get everything tidied up. So that matrix system, I think, is much more effective. So that sort of, the matrix system is in options 2 and 3. Not that I'm steering you at all, but I think, and it depends whether we still want to have member involvement in the options, and that's a matter for discussion. So I'll go first of all to Kate for a question.
I was on the last committee that went through the grants for the revenue. I think the capital's fine. I like the criteria that's been set. I like the amount of money that's been allocated. On the revenue, I've got a couple of things that I'm not... I don't understand why we need a presentation. After about 4 days, we got to a point where we were word perfect about what every person was going to come in and say how passionate they were about whatever it was they were talking about. I think if you do all this paperwork beforehand and you do your matrix, you've got all the stuff there. If we have that copy beforehand, or whoever's there has that copy beforehand, they don't need a presentation. They could have like a 10-minute question and answer. If we've done our homework, we can question them on something that we're worried about, and then we're done. So I think that would cut the time in half, probably. I don't like the idea of 3 year. I just think 1 year. I think all the other things are very complicated, and I think we're getting away from the original idea of what the grants was about, for local people to come and see if they can have some help for that year. So that's just my ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Do you want to come back on that, Ryan?
So the only point on the 3-year grant to consider is some of the organisations reapply every year. Every year we say what a valuable service they provide, how closely we work with them, how they support some of our most vulnerable residents. So again, it's just providing them with a bit of sort of longer term security, knowing that they've got that financial grant in the next 1, 2, 3 years. So it's only where we identify a key partner providing a key service for a particular cohort or a particular group. So that was the rationale for providing a 3-year option as part of this review.
Sean?
I wrote my question down so I can get it wrong. What support can parish and town councils get if not allowed to bid for capital and revenue grants, especially as self-funding allocation is also subject to various conditions and recommendations? Is this a further reduction in support for parish and town councils?
Part of the rationale was focusing the grant and the budget to those groups who are really struggling, find it difficult to raise money, difficult to get other grants coming in. Town and parishes, arguably, they could use their precept, their own finances. So again, this was just trying to target support to those organisations in a competitive market. What we heard last year was lots of groups saying, I've submitted 23 applications, didn't get success or didn't hear from any. So there's more organisations out there trying to apply for a diminishing pot, is what the information we were given. So it was just trying to focus that support to those local voluntary charitable groups.
Thank you. Sorry, probably should have submitted that as an email question. Apologies.
It didn't show, Neil.
Chairman, I can't speak about the task and finish group, but I've heard from several members how effective it was last year. So clearly that's something that's worth keeping going. Absolutely. I went through all the pros and cons in the various options and made some notes and discounted some. I don't like option 7 because it takes control away from the council. So that's a no-no, I would have thought. Option 6 results in uncertainty and there's moral considerations about lotteries. I don't like that either. 5 reduces the number of supported organisations. 4 results in complexity. Option 1 is as it is, and that's disproportionate costs. So we left to come down to, as you suggested, 2 and 3. And I think 2 probably gives the best filtering and an assessment with the task and finish group from how it worked last year, by all accounts.
Okay, thank you. Janet, see your hand went out, see you.
I'm just not quite clear about exactly what's being proposed into regarding the task and finish group. Just background from my point of view, being someone who's quite experienced in applying for grants, so I spend quite a lot of my time doing it. New Forest District Council's just unique in having to have these presentations. We have to go and make a presentation, and that seems to extend the whole process a great deal. The whole process takes 6 months to get, not very much money, whereas others 3 months would be about standard. And also, you're called to give your presentation. You might have to take a half a day off work or whatever it is. It's not very convenient for the applicants. So I'd be very keen to be able to cut that bit out to the, appearing before the panel, and also I'd be very happy for officers to make the decisions. So I wasn't quite sure whether one of these options describes that scenario.
I think I can say that the options that meet what you've just said are options 2 or 3, and 3 still involves the task and 2 still involves the task and finish group. And if you think back to the process we went through on the SIL allocations, how slick it was and how efficient the matrix scoring system was, but still enabling members to actually scrutinise and to sort of ask meaningful questions. I think that's where the value of members come in, because again, having a spread of members with different locality knowledge, they can come in and ask questions based upon that locality knowledge, which I think is a valuable issue personally. So 2 and 3, I think, meet what you're concerned about there.
Yes, I'm obviously mindful of the fact I don't want to steer the panel in any way, but my feeling on this all along has always been that if we can tighten up some of the criteria, which is what's being proposed, then it will help Ryan very much so in the run-up to it, which is streamlining the process and time. And to me, a very strong thing for me is member engagement. I've said it all along. I think it's important that we still have a role for councillors. And again, my feeling would be 2 or 3. Probably I would say 2, but this is your decision.
I think we're all trying not to steer and keep it to open discussion, Janet.
I quite like the lottery idea, but I don't think it could be the only source of funding, because it's a bit sort of, sort of the Wild West, really. You know, it's just relying on people out there rather than someone who's actually going to look at what is really needed. And you can imagine some of the less sexy projects might not get the money that they need. So I think it's important I think there would be a role for having a lottery for some of these smaller amounts of money, but under £3,000, which is now being suggested. But it couldn't be the only source of money. So I think I'd be quite keen to trial that.
Ian.
Yeah, thank you. Just regarding the options 2, strangely enough, and the options 3 and 4 that are similar, just for clarification, is that a single window application or is there the opportunity for multi window applications throughout the year?
These are single window applications.
Lovely, thank you for that.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, thank you. Very much aligning my thoughts with Dan Poole's. As you know, I've chaired the panel 3 or 4 times, and I've attended it many times. But basically, what's key for me, of course, is member engagement. We can't hide from that. I think it's essential that members have an ability to challenge and to scrutinise. And so, therefore, without any hesitation, I would certainly lean towards 2 or 3, probably 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Neville.
Yeah, I agree, number 2. I think that's the best way to go. I totally agree with Dan.
Kate.
Are we in a position to propose, or aren't we going to do that?
I'll come to that in just a minute. Sean.
What, if any, consideration is there for raising council engagement grant budgets, especially if revenue grants minimum figure will rise, and to cover any shortfalls on organisations who would miss out?
So that was referring to the current £600 community engagement grant. I mean, this process today is just looking at what model do we want to adopt going forward, how do we want to change the process. The actual budget and how we utilise that will be considered during the task and finish group process or part of this process. So we've got that additional funding that's been allocated. How we utilise that, we can agree at a later date. But at the moment, today is just looking at the current process, what we want to adopt as our model from April 2025. So it will be looked into.
Okay, thank you.
I think as far as our own councillor grants are concerned, we're allowed to carry it over for 1 year, making it 2 years in total.
And what we did approve at Cabinet last year was any unspent councillor grant funding can be put back into this pot. Obviously, what we want to do is try and encourage councillors to utilise their funding. So again, I work with some of them to look at particular areas or particular groups, particular cohorts of organisations to try and ensure we can support as many groups as possible. And again, part of the process last year, often the applications would come in and when we were speaking to people, we said, have you utilised the councillor grants? Have you gone to Community First? So that was one of the things we promoted as well.
Yeah, it's just with upping the minimum from £1,000 to £3,000, you know, councillor grants would fill in perhaps some of those gaps.
I think the level of councillor grant funding will, as Ryan said, will come later. But I think that it is a fact that some councillors, depending on where they're geographically placed and the type of ward they've got, so if you're a town centre ward or a town ward, you've probably got more organisations who will look to you to have small, the small grants that we can offer. So being able to sometimes carry that over for the second year, I find useful, but I never have problems spending my grant money. Neither does Councillor Davis in our ward, as we work together in that respect, because we've got all the organisations within the town. And I know other towns have the same issue, same sort of issues where they can easily find allocation. I think some of the more rural locations in the district, there's probably less organisations who come. So it's an interesting argument and a discussion to be had, but another day, I think. Who else put their hand up? Sorry.
I just wasn't sure how the actual lottery one worked and who puts into the lottery and how much money is in that lottery? And what do the other councils get from it? Do they get more money than what we are budgeting, or less money, or can we run them at the same time?
Lots of questions there. I'll try and answer them in order. Obviously, it's a lottery scheme. Anyone can purchase a lottery ticket, £1 a week, and then a proportion of that goes towards admin, a portion of that goes towards a central pot where applicants or organisations can register and get some of that money. You can have a certain proportion of that money where you make decisions as well. So it depends on what model you use. Other councils across Hampshire do use that. Again, differences in how much they generate. So I don't think any of them generate the same level of budget that we currently have through our grant scheme. That's one of the drawbacks. Now, we're committed to our amount, it's guaranteed, and we would look to use that to award grants up to. Obviously, a lottery scheme, it may be a lot less, in which case, how much support can you give? I think I've answered all your questions. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come now to the report itself. I go first of all to the eligibility. Isn't it amazing how one word suddenly makes it impossible for you to pronounce it? Eligibility, got it. Criteria first, which is at 9.1. Are all members happy with the content of that eligibility criteria? Can I ask a member to propose? Thank you, Kate. And second? Thank you, Neil. So in terms of the eligibility criteria, we're happy with that. And now the choice of delivery model. Neil, would you like to propose an option?
I'm happy to propose option 2 because it's my favoured one.
Can I have that seconded? That's seconded, thirded, fourth. Are there any other?
Just to be clear with option 2, that is still having the task and finish group with the organisations coming to do a presentation. So we had different views on whether there was a presentation or not. So I don't think we necessarily need to seek clarity.
Yeah. Okay. So any other proposals for any of the other options? We appear not to have. Kate?
Couldn't we just have them in for questions rather than the long presentation? Could we adjust it so that it's shorter and more succinct? Because we've got all the information in front of us. All we need is a quick question session. It'd speed things up, wouldn't it?
That's the proposal, of course, yeah.
I mean, that's what you're doing for capital, isn't it? No, you're not.
Think that suggestion there by Kate has probably got merit because under the matrix system, everything's there. And if you think back to the seal task and finish group, the only thing we were raising was specific questions. So no presentation, specific questions if the members have it. And that, again, continues to streamline the process. Does that work? Do we need to amend the detail of that recommendation to that point?
I can put clarity in the report for the Cabinet reports.
Right. Okay, thank you, Kate. I think that was a good final last-minute suggestion there, in which case we've got proposers and lots of seconders for option 2. Are members all happy with option 2 being recommended with the amendment put forward by Kate to bring organisations in purely for questions that might arise as a result of the matrix system?
No, I wouldn't vote for that option. So I'm not happy with that.
Right. Okay.
No, not now you've changed it. Yeah. Would it be possible to also look at running a lottery for those smaller amounts of money, less than £3,000. Well, it could be more, obviously, but it's more likely to satisfy those amounts of money.
Ryan, would it be, I think the question is it possible to run that in addition to option 2?
It's a separate scheme, so you can decide to do that if that's what you wanted to do. Whether you want to, or I can come back with some more information about what the possible scheme could look like, how it would work, so you've got a more informed decision with some more details. If that's what the panel recommend, I can do that.
Okay, Kate, I saw your hand come up at that point as well.
I was just thinking part of this process was trying to streamline it, and I think that's adding another arm to the workload. So I would be against that.
Okay. Janet, if you want to make a proposal, I'll see if you're seconded.
Okay, so my proposal would be that we investigate, in other words, get more detail on running a lottery scheme as well, which would have the advantage that it wouldn't cost the council any money, that it could actually raise extra funds to be distributed via the community grant scheme, and that it would be minimal administration work for the council.
Is there a second, or do you wish to speak now?
Quick chat. Yeah, I would support the principle of looking into it, because it's
Are you
always
se-
worth
are you
looking at
seconding?
things. So I would second that as a looking into.
All in favour of that proposal then? 1, 2, 3. All don't you just love it? One abstention. Neil, I know you particularly like the fact that it's now the chairman's choice. The only concern I have is that may be onerous for a further investigation on officers' time at the moment. So at this point in time, I will, Dan.
Chairman, may I suggest that we perhaps look at this proposal, but because of the time now and the fact that we're getting close to the start of this year's, stick with the current agreement and look at it for next year. That may be the sensible option. It would certainly give us more time to investigate it properly.
That was more or less where I was handed, but you saved me the problem of trying to put that into words. I think it does have merit, but at this point in time, I think we'll concentrate on the main proposal and look at that for the future. Is that okay, Ryan?
So we have done some investigative work already, some background information. So as we're still maintaining the task and finish group, we could use that as a way of reviewing and making a recommendation, if that's an option.
Okay, I think that's a good way forward. That we're parking it sort of, but we are not ignoring. I think what everything you put forward there's got good merit, and I have an additional scheme where money is going to be raised is always a potential bonus. So I've got no problem with that, but within the task and finish group as opposed to a separate proposal. Okay, everybody happy with that? Thank you. We now move on to item 6, the Housing Annual Compliance Report. This is Richie. This is a wonderfully technical document for you all to enjoy. And he's even standing up for it. Oh, sorry, it's Ryan just stood up.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. Richie Thompson, Service Manager for Housing Major Works. I'm pleased to introduce the Housing Annual Compliance Report to members. The report is to provide safety compliance measures in respect of the Council's housing stock covering the period up to the 30th of June 2024. Compliance with statutory safety requirements is a key priority for housing. In recent years, extra resources have been made available to strengthen the council's approach to statutory compliance work, and it's firmly embedded within the day-to-day work and culture of the council's housing service. This includes the governance arrangements, where we have a housing statutory compliance board, a fire safety management steering group working with our fire rescue service partners, covering fire, asbestos and CDM safety operational working groups. The report also provides an update on the requirements of the new Section 156 of the Building Safety Act, which in effect amends the fire safety order and work to identify reinforced autoclave aerated concrete, more publicly known as RAC, within housing buildings, and provides an update on damp, mould and disrepair reports from residents. Section 4 sets out the work relating to reports of damp and mould and the continuing ongoing work that we do to support residents with those types of reports. Section 5 covers quality assurance and all of our professional memberships. Section 6 covers all of our key compliance activity measures, and Section 7 specifically covers the topic of RAC within housing buildings. I am pleased to report we haven't identified any RAC within our housing stock. We have identified some other non-traditional type construction, but obviously not related to reinforced aerated concrete. The new social housing regulatory regime implemented through the Social Housing Residents Charter, the introduction of tenant satisfaction measures known as TSMs, the new Social Housing Regulation Act from April 23 and the new consumer standards place greater emphasis on tenant safety and has brought about a range of new significant measures to improve the services provided to tenants by registered providers. The Council was an early adopter of the regime and has benefited from early reporting of TSMs, and the Council's data has been submitted to the regulator, and we published our performance on the 8th of July 24. Our TSM performance will be covered by a presentation under the next agenda item. The Council's executive management team also considered the report at their meeting held on the 15th of May, and it's recommended that members note the breadth of activity and the performance against all the key statutory measures, and I'd be happy, Chair, to take any questions from members.
Thank you, Richie. I particularly like 6.44, which is 100% compliance, and 6.53, which is 100% compliance. The others, 98, 99%. But I think our compliance is pretty good. Members, you'll be pleased to note we're not making recommendations. This is a presentation, but of course questions go to Kate first.
It's just a question on page 48. Could you just give me a bit background on it? Says decent home standard. It's quite a low percentage. You obviously got a reason for that. 2.14. Yeah, I know that, but why? I mean, how are we moving forward on it? That's really what I'm asking. Yeah, on page 48, it says 2.14 for decent home standard. I'm on the next, well, it still says tenant satisfaction measures. Well, he's just been talking about team satisfaction measures. I'll just shut up and go in. Sorry.
We're all scrolling through our screens.
I'll await. Sorry. I didn't realise I was cut off.
Sorry, Chair, I think I understand your question. So in essence, what the report sets out is 2.4% of our housing stock doesn't currently meet decent home standards. that could be where tenants may have refused to have work carried out, or where, due to the type of construction of the property, the ability to be able to bring it up to that standard isn't feasible. And that's about looking at longer term packages of work of how we can bring that very small proportion of properties up to that standard.
Sorry, I read it the wrong way round. I was thinking it was 2.4.
You frightened me for a minute.
I'll go away.
Do you have any evidence that might only be anecdotal that residents are taking notice of the advice we're given about damp and condensation? Are we finding a drop in the number of reported incidents?
Obviously, with all the reports within social media in the autumn of the previous year in 23, we had a big spike of reports. So we've put in a range of measures, including a new triage team, resident information and guides, risk matrices when we receive a call, so that obviously we can prioritise our resources to meet those of the highest risk. And we monitor repeat reports for damp and mould. So that's to ensure that we continue working with residents to address any of those types of concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Gary.
Yeah, it just answered my question, because it was going to be that 2022 we received 546 reports, and then 2023 354. And I was going to ask, did you know whether they were reported by the same people? But you do capture that. Yeah.
Okay, we've had the presentation, you've asked the questions. I think I'd like to thank the whole team that's involved with compliance. When you see ratings at this level, I think our tenants should be very pleased to be living in an area like the New Forest, where our properties are kept to the highest standards, and the next report's going to highlight that as well. So it's nice to be sitting here and be actually very proud of the performance of our team. So Richie, can you pass that on to the whole team, that members are extremely impressed and encouraged by the compliance standards, and keep up the good work. 100% all round though next time?
Thank you, Chair, will do.
Move on now to item 7, the tenant satisfaction measures, which again I think is really good news.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm David Brown, Tenant Engagement Manager and Housing Resident Services. I'm presenting to you today the tenant satisfaction measures as we have submitted to the regulator, and as Richie said, I won't dwell on the reasons. We know that it was a new regulatory regime, started collecting these in April of last year, and this is our final figures for 23-24. And 81% of our tenants are satisfied with our housing services overall. Now, of course, whilst we'd always like to be closer to 100%, if you look at both nationally for housing and also the customer service index, that is a really good satisfaction score for overall services. I would really like to highlight for members the satisfaction specifically around our repairs and our properties. You'll see there that 82.8% of tenants are satisfied with our repair service and the time it takes to complete a repair. 82.1% are satisfied that home is well maintained. And I think the really crucial one for me, and mirroring what Richie said in terms of us being really close to those high compliance figures, 84.7% of our tenants feel that their home is safe. And I think those are really positive and high level figures to call out and recognise where we are having some really good performance there. Like I said, there's always room for improvement, and we always listen to our tenants and make sure that we are focusing on those areas. But it's really great and something that should be celebrated and cheered along with our teams for. Again, the figures are self-explanatory, but some of the areas for highlight in terms of future progress and improvement, you'll see that our complaint response is low. We need to be improving that, and we've already put things in place. And I'm really pleased to say that our tenant involvement groups scrutinised our complaints process, our complaints response, and our complaint over the last 12 months. They've given recommendations to our complaint manager, which went into our response to the regulator. So again, we've got improvements in train there, and that's alongside how tenants feel we listen and act to their views. Again, our tenant engagement strategy was agreed and implemented post these surveys. So again, we should be able to see those improvements coming in. And again, our antisocial behaviour cases are being looked at and scrutinised more closely. And also our communal areas, there is a focus on those areas in our services at the moment to make sure that we're looking at those and how we can improve in partnership with our tenants. This is a really helpful couple of graphs. Apologies for the size. Obviously, this presentation has been shared, but the organisation who completed the tenant satisfaction surveys independent on our behalf, the TLF, they collated responses for 84 registered providers as well, some large organisations, some small, both housing association and local authority. And you'll see that New Forest are in the green there. And I think, that's, again, something showing really positive that we are in that top quartile of high performance. And you'll see the average score for overall satisfaction for the providers that submitted their survey results to TLF was 71.1%. The bottom right-hand figures shows on average where we are. Our figures are the black dot, and the averages range from the green at the very highest to the red at the bottom. And again, just calling out the recognition that complaints, we are below average, but everything else, we're really performing well in terms of that national average. And then not to compare ourselves and cast shade on any other organisation, but Winchester City Council, very similar size organisation to us and very similar in terms of geography and tenant makeup. You'll see that our comparison there is very good and above that comparison directly there. Again, recognising complaints is a low point for a number of organisations. As per Richie's report, these are our tenant satisfaction measurements that we have to take our performance measures. And again, whilst I won't dwell on these figures, there is a recognition, like Chairman has said and like Richie has said, we really would like to be in 100% in all of those, recognising that there are always some barriers to accessing homes and completing some of those compliance measures. We recognise that our water safety checks were a snapshot figure in March. We submitted that to the regulator, and the regulator did ask for some clarification there, and we were able to demonstrate that that was a particular performance issue for that month, and we are back to 100% performance for April and ongoing in that area. So again, really good positive performance there. And this slide is just that, presented the same figures presented in a little bit more of a user-friendly way. So again, just makes it a little bit easier to read than those graphs that we had. Just wanted to highlight the next steps. As I've already suggested, we've published these externally and for our tenants and partners now on the 8th of July. Home Talk will be, our tenant magazine will be hitting doorsteps next week. That has also got a full page spread in there regarding these. So we're being really transparent with our tenants and our partners. Members will have seen the press release that went out, hopefully on the 8th of July, and that was part of a formal comms plan. I've mentioned those actions for improvements. Those are the 4 areas that we're really focusing on, and that's the areas that we know the regulator will be looking at, given that those were our areas where we weren't scoring as highly as we perhaps would have liked. And again, just to update members, the collection of next year's data, we've successfully procured the services of Acuity Research and Practice to undertake future surveys for us, and they're a really engaged and professional organisation. Looking forward to get cracking on this year's figures. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. That last slide, talking about communal areas, I'm going to slightly embarrass Dave now because he does take his job very seriously. And a couple of months or so back, we had a project in Councillor Davis and myself's ward to improve an area of a housing estate. We shifted about 6 tonnes of soil to be able to replant. Dave actually came out at the weekend and spent several hours with us on the Saturday. I can assure you that he's probably the champion wheelbarrow filler. And it's really nice to see that our members of staff actually do come out and put their back where their mouth is, so to speak, and it came out. Has your back actually recovered, Dave?
It has, Chairman, and thank you for the very kind comments. And actually, we've put something in the tenant magazine Home Talk to really encourage tenants to come forward and suggest these ideas. Very happy to support those. Whilst we may not be able to lead on them, we can come out, we can support tenants on that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. As I say, I think the tenants, the residents have actually appreciated it. I've not received negative reports about it at all.
It's all been positive, and one of the members one of the tenants that came out on the day has actually volunteered to be one of our tenant involvement groups. So again, another positive from that is getting more people involved. So yeah, it's been really good and very positive feedback.
Okay, I mentioned that because there were people make comments to me when I said we needed to do smarten up an area, and Dave was all for it to help us, and we had a very enthusiastic member of our community to help that, and she does litter pit all the time there and really does a good job for us. But I did receive some comments to say, oh, there's no point in doing it, it won't be appreciated. I just encourage all members that, I know Neville takes this same view, that you encourage your communities to come out and take part in projects, and you get positive respects that sometimes counter the stereotypes. So, but thank you once again, Dave. We really did appreciate your prowess at filling that wheelbarrow. Ian, I hadn't forgotten you there.
Thank you. Yeah, just wondering, I remember when these came in and was keen to see community engagement improve from the amount of responses we got. Have you seen an improved amount of responses in terms of where these figures are coming from the engagement? Are more of our tenants getting on board to give you more of the information, essentially? Thank you.
I think yes. I think in terms of the actual tenant satisfaction measures, the regulations have been really clear. You have to collect a certain percentage and you have to be proactive, but you have to ask the questions in a certain way. Now, I would suggest that we haven't necessarily seen more interaction from tenants because of this, but what we have done is part of our strategy is been more proactive in going out. And what I'm starting to feel and hear is that tenants are interested in what we're doing. So I've got a member at the moment of my team who goes out to our community hubs, which we weren't doing before, and we're starting to see more of a flow of people coming in. And I think now that we've promoted, and we'll be promoting in Home Talk, the tenant satisfaction measures, one of our calls to action is, if you want to be involved, these are the ways you can get involved, and we've been really clear on that. So the short answer to your question is, probably not from the tenant satisfaction measures, but it's all part of the process of getting more involvement and singing about the work that we do that we perhaps haven't done before.
Lovely, thank you very much.
I think we've started a theme about getting tenants involved and that community involvement. I think it's absolutely essential, whether that practical demonstration that I highlighted or the other ways in which we do it. Neville?
I'm just going off the subject a little bit. Sarah Compton House at Kelmore, the lounges were closed quite a few years ago, and I believe they were going to be looked at and made into flats. I was up there last week. I got called up because the residents there look after the garden and plant flowers. It looks really good, but I just wondered about the two lounges.
Hi, Chair, I can take that question. Thank you, Councillor Penman. We do have a number of ex-warden controlled blocks with some communal space. They were closed as part of the pandemic, and they're very rarely used by residents. Obviously, one of the issues we've got, particularly around fire safety, is residents were bringing in furniture that doesn't meet requirements, books, puzzles, and because we're not on site managing those buildings, it was beginning to cause us an issue. So we made the decision to close a number of those blocks as part of the pandemic, and we chose not to reopen them when we came out of the pandemic. We haven't had any complaints from residents, particularly around that decision. And there are some of those communal blocks like Compton and Sarum that have the potential for some future reorganisation, particularly for things like DDA compliant ground floor flat unit accommodation, for example. And we look at that as part of our housing strategy moving forward.
Okay, it's just that they have been empty for quite a long time now. And to me, you know, they could be used. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Ian, you've got another question?
I do, for the questions this evening. So with regards to the tenants that we have that are under social housing but are being leased through private landlords giving into our schemes, whatever the word I'm looking for, are we getting the same involvement with them compared to these communal areas, the places like Compton and Sarum, where there are a larger community presence? Those sort of individual properties that we get, are they under the same sort of scheme? Are they getting the same sort of input?
So, short answer is in terms of it's only low-cost home ownership accommodations included in the regulatory requirements. So, anyone that's in a private landlord, for example, private sector leasing, no, we won't engage with them in the same way we do our social housing tenants. However, the regulation's been clear that where we've got mixed tenure communities, we should be working with our communities, other landlords, and the people that live in those communities to create that community environment. So as part of the strategy, the tenant engagement strategy, that is something that we'll be doing, and we're undertaking a piece of work, or Sarah in my team is undertaking a piece of work at the moment where she's looking at those mixed tenure estates and communities and who we need to involve to almost create those community action days. What do you need and how can we support those? Thank you.
Okay, looking around, there's no other issues. Just to finally congratulate the whole team again on some really excellent results. And as I say, seeing us heading towards more community involvement is really good, because the more we get our community involved, the more pride they take in the area. So, and that's any community, not just social housing. Move on now to item 8, the creative and cultural development on pages 53 to 62, another presentation. And I said my briefing, who knew we did so much?
Thank you. I'm Keely Wenray. I'm the Creative and Cultural Development Manager. This presentation today is intended as a service update. We are a relatively new service in that I've been here 2 years now, since the role was introduced in partnership with Arts Council England. And off that, I guess, just a reminder that as arts and culture, creativity and culture, we are really taking the position of leading on development. We are not a service looking to replicate or duplicate any of the work of our arts delivery partners, but we are working in the area of sector support to encourage and recognise the known impacts of culture, which are health and well-being, economic development and place shaping. Unfortunately, I'm having a technical issue. There we go, one moment. There we go. So my first slide this evening is really just an overview of the areas of work we are currently doing. So one is that we are taking a leading role on a place-based cultural strategy. That is going to be the focus of my presentation, so I will come back to that. But just to recognise that that is us taking a leading role on a partnership approach. So we're working with the National Park, we're working with Hampshire Cultural Trust, and we're working with Folio, our collective of arts and cultural organisations. We're also delivering this year a number of projects via shared prosperity funding. We've got 1 year of funding. And our focus really here is on developing Folio as a project, which is I will come to next, but also looking at where we can provide support for our rural and outdoor arts development. Our natural landscape, our unique place, lends itself to rural and outdoor cultural development. And off the back of these 1 year funded schemes, we're now starting a project with independent producer to look at what the legacy of those projects could be. And you can see it says Rome development. Rome stands for Rural and Outdoor Arts Month, and that's something we're looking at as a district-wide arts festival type approach, really focused around raised awareness of all the community cultural activity going on. Folio is a project that we lead on as the District Council. Folio is really focusing on that sector support. So it's a collective of now 16 arts and cultural organisations, including St Barb Museum, it includes Hanger Farm Arts Centre, and multiple others. We've also now grown a network of over 200 freelancers on that network. So we're really well connected with those working and delivering in our communities. Through that business as usual activity, we provide networking and training events. We host arts and culture area at the New Forest Show, and we're also looking at developing our work for young people entering creative careers under the Folio Futures banner. We also co-deliver on Culture in Common. This is an Arts Council funded project across the whole of the New Forest, specifically working with those least engaged with arts and culture, and it's focused on co-creating art with our communities. So art happening with communities, not to communities. We take two roles in Culture in Common. We take a governance role. We sit on the consortium from a strategic viewpoint, and we also take a lead in co-managing some of the projects on a day-to-day basis too. The last two are really where we've been able to provide support for external and internal projects. So again, this is about just putting some strategy behind what's already happening and making sure that all of our projects are pulling in the same direction. So we've been supporting on things from a company that are looking to build an open air theatre in the forest to Furzy Gardens, who have started their own arts initiatives. We provide kind of a consultancy advice type position there, and then also with internal teams. Hopefully you've seen the cedar tree outside, and we've got a litter sculpture going on tour as part of our behavioural insights work, and I've been providing support on how we engage with artistic interventions on other council messaging. So, cultural strategy. Cultural strategy has been suggested to multiple areas that are priority places, of which we are one, an Arts Council priority place. Arts Council have given us funding to develop this. They work on a model of using a cultural, what they call a cultural compact, and what we are calling a cultural development advisory board, to ensure that we don't work in isolation and lead on a cultural initiative that doesn't suit the place or other partners. So here I'm just giving you a bit of insight into who some of those partners are. Really proud that we've kind of covered health, we've covered the cultural sector, we work closely with Hampshire County Council, library service, and also social prescribers. We work with those freelance organisations as well, so we've got their understanding. We're currently working on 3 main streams for our cultural strategy. I'm really proud to say we've just wrapped up cultural engagement. In fact, I just got the report back this afternoon from our community engagement. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but over the month of June, we've been out in our community engaging with residents, we've been engaging, we ran a councillor session, we ran a session for industry professionals, really getting to grips with what they want, what they would like to see, and how they feel about where they live and the cultural offer. The second work stream at the minute is collecting some of what we need to know in data. We don't have anything as a service that really gives us a baseline measure of where we are to measure where we want to be. So we're in the process of scoping that at the moment, and we're out to procurement at the moment. Also, scoping what the delivery funding could look like. So there's quite a lot of resource and time that goes into pulling in the larger strategic funds needed to deliver on bigger initiatives. So we're starting those conversations with Arts Council now. However, following the general election, we're just waiting to hear what happens to some of those funding schemes and if they're to remain the same or whether they're to change. I've got a really great slide here to show you from our community sessions. So the numbers are just the numbers of attendees we had. So you can see we actually engaged over 150 people in these sessions. We had a facilitator who is an expert in cultural community engagement. We also had an artist in the session, so all the people that came along had a chance to have a go at something creative, as well as dive into some of those facilitated conversations about what they'd like to see in their communities. And we also did something really, I'd say, artsy. We put a poet in residence in each of the sessions as well. So what happened is we had a poet in each of our sessions who really captured everything that everyone was saying, and we've got these 5 brilliant poems now that have come out of each of the areas. Those were set up really in a citizens' assembly type way. So it was really about putting the decision making out to our community. And what we now have is a lovely set of recommendations for our strategy that have come directly from our residents. And hopefully we'll include as many of those as possible. I also just have a quick update on where we are. So in our original report, the timelines, you can see the one thing that is has been pushed is that data piece. We are doing that now. We're now at reviewing the engagement data, and we are hoping by early autumn to have developed a set of priorities and themes for the strategy. We, again, are working towards hopefully a publication date of January 2025. I'm just also conscious that we just need to hold tight and see if there's any change to central cultural policy that we would need to consider. So we'll just wait to see what happens there. And then I thought I'd share a bit of you what's been going on. So Culture in Common, as I mentioned, is an Arts Council funded project. Here is just a taste of some of the things we've set up over the last 2 years. We have an ambition of setting up 24 new creative clubs. These are just 2. One is an MS dance group, one is a wheelchair dance group. We have others such as cartoon drawing and storytelling. Acting Up, which you can see in the bottom left, is really about bringing professional cultural experiences to rural locations and also recognising the travel challenges that some of our residents have in the winter. We'll be running Acting Up again this year. It's 2 seasons of professional theatre, music and dance programmed into village halls that communities pick themselves. So it's a really exciting initiative. You can also see the Story Quest project that we did at Gangwarily over on the right. This is a story quest that encourages activity and walking, and our local primary schools work with an illustrator to design the story, and then they download the story and take part. Lots of other things going as well. We've been able to provide funding for Waterside Arts Festival to restart through Culture in Common. Top right, you can see art boxes. They were distributed through the food banks, which provided arts activities to people at home. And then this slide just reflects a bit of what our portfolio partners are out doing. You can see on the bottom right, that is a new capital project called The Living Room. This is a space specifically for dementia sufferers to take part in gentle arts activity. You can see the picture above it is a group doing that. It's a lovely circular venue. We've got outdoor theatre, we've got arts trails, we've got touring theatre. We're just about doing everything here in the New Forest, and we have already moved statistically from a place of low cultural engagement to mid cultural engagement in the 2 years since I've started. So really great stuff. Just to finish up, I thought I'd give you a bit of an insight into kind of what we're focusing on coming up. So we really are positioning ourselves in the leading role for cultural development in the area. That is closely working with Arts Council, Hampshire Cultural Trust and the Folio partners. We want to deliver the cultural strategy, which will hopefully show a sense of cultural maturity and attract wider funding and partnership opportunities. We have a lot going on in the New Forest, and a lot of our issues when it comes to cultural development don't lie in the fact that it's not here. It's that it's underfunded and underconnected. So a large part of the cultural strategy is about aligning resources and making sure that we have ambitious plans around funding. Culture in Common we've just applied for an extension year. So we had 3 years of funding initially. We've applied for a 4th. We should have a decision about that soon. We are, under the impression that that should be smooth sailing. We've put in a very strong application. Most of the projects of a similar nature are well into their 10th, 11th year. So we are hoping that Culture in Common will stay around. Folio for many years has been a project that we lead on, which is quite informal. We now are moving forward in such strides that we've got some serious decisions to make about governance of that project and how that's structured and how we can best align ourselves for future funding. The next point is one around public art. So public art is something that we don't do as a council, something that multiple councils do, something that funding for only really comes from local authorities. So at the minute, we're working with our colleagues over in planning and looking at potentially an allocation of SIL funding to look at what we can be doing out in the public. I find the word public art quite divisive myself, and that's coming from the arts officer. And I think what we're really talking about here is where we can use artistic and creative interventions to make public spaces more appealing. Places to meet, places to sit, places to, socialise, and how can we be ensuring our residents feel proud about where they live and how it looks. The last one is to develop Rome. So I mentioned at the start, we're looking at a rural and outdoor arts month. There is so much going on here in the New Forest. I'm so proud of so much but so much of it goes on behind closed doors. One of the biggest things we've heard from our residents is they just don't know what there is to do. They don't know how to get in. We've got so many things that people can access for free. We've got so many health and wellbeing programs. We've got wonderful things going on. So Rome for us is really a strategic project to raise awareness of what we do well, and making sure that things are as accessible as possible to our citizens. So that's me. Whistle-stop tour of everything we've been doing.
Thanks, Kate. You looked a little nervous when you started. Is this the first time you've done a presentation to us?
No.
I just wondered because you're brilliant at it. Thank you. I've got a small question, a bit parochial. I'm going to go at the moment. See whether you might be able to help us in New Milton. Are you aware that we've got the Indian Memorial there, and we've got the Barton beachfront? Now, in terms of the Barton Clifftop and beachfronts, I want to talk fossils, not just the ones in the room, and I wonder whether we've been looking for somewhere where we could find a home for both all the material that relates to the Indian War Memorial and the events that memorialises, and obviously the history that goes back to fossil collecting, which actually started in Barton over 100 and something years ago. I just wonder if there's any way that you might be able to offer advice and help on that to us.
I can't offer much in terms of fossils. In terms of the Indian history, it's very apt because right now we have a Culture in Common funded exhibition in the Heritage Centre. We actually were able to pull in a curator of that exhibition of a much higher calibre because we were able to get Culture in Common funding behind it. So I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take what we have and add value where we can. What we're not looking at doing is creating a whole new scheme of work and, something radical. On your fossil question, though, leave it with me and I will I will see what I come up with.
I think I'd appreciate it. We've had a few questions coming in because for a number of years in our area, New Milton being the new town, doesn't actually have a museum, whereas Lyndhurst does, Lymington does. but there is a lot of history and heritage there. One big part of it is the Indian War Memorial and that wonderful contribution that our troops from, we say Indian troops, but that relates to a different period in history. Obviously, it's the whole of that part of the world, which and in a different time and place. But they made a wonderful contribution, and it is now being celebrated. But it's actually a focal point for the whole of the country in some respects, and could be promoted in a big way. But if we linked it with the fossils that were found in Barton and the original sort of research that was done there, just wonder whether that's something we could make as a more focal point for our part of the forest. And would appreciate anything you can do in that direction. So sometimes we have to be parochial, because otherwise it's always Tottenham and Neville that is looking for a focus and attention. So there's a personal plea there. Members, any questions? Neville, see, I knew you'd be coming in.
Sorry about that. First of all, great work. Keep it up. It's brilliant. I've got two things I need to ask you about. Tottenham Creative Hub, which has just opened in the shopping centre in Tottenham. How much involvement have you had in that? That's
quite a lot. I'm also pleased to say we've been able to fund a new creative drop-in session there through our shared prosperity funding. I've worked with Lee and Ali, the creative directors there, even in securing the location and really recognising that our cultural infrastructure really kind of sits around the west of the district and needing a bit more of a space that can be used in Totton. So they took all of that into account when deciding where to base themselves. And they're a fantastic organisation that I know from their work in Basingstoke, so I'm really excited to have them in the area.
Yeah, that's great, yeah, thank you. The second thing is Hanger Farm. Now, that's one of Tottenham Council's, I think, gems. The problem I have found, I'm on the consultative committee there for Tottenham Council. They've got some great acts, tribute bands. It's tremendous. We know it's run by Minster Trust. I just find that they struggle a bit. Is there anything you can do to help them? Because I think that we could double the amount of people that go there. It's right in the middle of a housing estate. I know as far as getting signs put out on even on the motorway and around Tottenham is quite expensive. Certainly on the main roads, which I know would be Hampshire County Council. I just find that they haven't got the funding for that. But I think we could increase the attendance there because they have some fantastic groups there, tribute acts. Some I was quite amazed. I mean, a couple of good stars that are older in age now. But I just feel they need some help, some expert help. And I didn't know if you're able to give.
So yeah, Hanger Farm, well, Minster Trust more widely are an active folio partner and are part of those conversations. I too would love to see Hanger Farm be much more utilised. I'd love to see much more going on there. I think one of the big issues we have here is that organisations often think the answer to wider audience development is marketing, and actually it more often than not is outreach, creating a relationship with your community and going out and showing people where they are, what could be experienced, because actually going to a new place can be quite intimidating. So that's really what we hope to do through the Rome project, commission projects that go out into our communities. Whilst that will only happen once a year or once every 2 years, the ongoing legacy of that will be that we're building connections between our communities and their local arts organisations, and hopefully encourage them to go to events or classes after an initial interaction. So we do hope that Rome will help all our folio partners in that way. And we are in active conversation about how we can grow audiences in Totton.
I mean, we have the biggest housing estate around, so people could actually walk there. They've got a bar. It's such a fantastic venue, but I just feel every time I've been up there 2 or 3 times to see some acts, and you know it's only half full, and they could do a lot more. I just find that when you go to a meeting there, and you try to help or say, is there anything we can do as a council? I just think they need some more help. And if there's anything you can do to help them, I think it would be great, because it's a shame, because it's a great venue.
Okay, thank you, Neville. Sean.
I think I may have asked this question a long time ago. At the moment, you're in the data collection phase. What level of granularity are you looking at to capture events to make sure everything's covered?
Good question. One we've been talking about today. I think at this stage, with the budget we have, we're looking at quite top line data. So I think we're looking at building a picture of our current cultural industry, the current economic impacts of our cultural sector here, as well as looking at asset mapping. So what do we have? The last thing we want to do is go out for a big capital project for a big new shiny building, and actually we've got all of those resources in the district already. So we're going through the process of making sure that we know what we have, we know what it's contributing, and then hopefully from that we'll identify where the opportunities are and where the themes are, and then we can go into further granular level of detail when we know where we're starting from. But we've just got such a lack of a picture at the moment. Everything's quite anecdotal, that we just need to start bringing that together.
Hilary, yes, you did have your hand up.
I've got a few questions actually, and that's just made me think of one. You mentioned in it about economic prosperity as well, and I'm just conscious that the council have been working in the past on bringing more film industry and things like that into the area to film and what have you. And whether there could be anything around actually trying to get the film industry or the TV industry to work in the forest. I'm just conscious that I know like the BBC have gone to Cardiff and they've gone to Glasgow and they've gone out to places, which is great, but nothing sort of in this direction. And I'm more conscious of that because my daughter's just started working in documentary making and has go to London. So because there's nothing, local at all, and whether that could be tied in with like the filmmaking, actually get people to do the production here. Second point is around the Rural and Outdoor Arts Month. I think that is brilliant, and if it can tie in, I know Neville was talking about the place in Tottenham. There's also another place in Tottenham, the Attic, which has some brilliant comedians there, people that are on TV and all sorts, but again, I don't know if people actually realise it's there, which is a real shame because it has a lot of the comedians you'll see on the telly or at the Mayflower or on big venues go there to try out their show first. So you get some really good people, but I just don't think people are aware of it, which is a real shame. And around the design and deliver public arts thing, a number of years ago I was working with Claire Upton Brown about putting stuff into Lyndhurst, so potential sculptural pieces of Alice in Wonderland, Conan Doyle, and there's a crazy guy that used to live in the area, the snake catcher. So having some sort of art and history around that, and then having more of that around the whole of the forest type thing, because I know if you go to different places like Gloucester and things like that, they've got loads of sort of art in different places, and it just makes you sort of wander around looking for them, and it's really interesting as well.
Okay. So on your first point around film, the council does run Film New Forest, which sits with economic development. So I'm not something I'm responsible for, but I work very closely with Sally. It's my understanding at the moment that's scaled back to be a film office only. They're not providing training opportunities or student opportunities or some of the other elements that used to be attached to Film New Forest. They are fielding and managing filming requests. And I am under the impression that due to lots of change in legislation, that's becoming harder and harder in the national park to do. So it can often be quite challenging to film companies. So I believe that's being looked at. But yes, I think what we can certainly do is pick up some of that training and education part through our Folio project, where we are looking at giving more opportunities to young people who are on the verge of going into a career and needing somewhere to gain that experience.
Anything around here where you
And hopefully that data piece we're doing as well will look at, again, top line, but a level of skills audit when it comes to creative sector skills in the area. So we'll have a better idea of where we're doing really well and where we're lacking. Just to mention the attic and River Studios, which is the downstairs bit where they've got an amazing suite of professional recording studios that just should be used so much more. They are an active folio partner as well. And so again, this awareness piece around Rome is about raising the awareness of all, they have some amazing people there that you can't believe are in the middle of Totton on a Friday night. So again, that Rome piece is around raising the awareness of what's going on across the district. A big piece of that will be a marketing piece and a branding piece. And then public art, just to pick up on that, I think we've got so many stories and so much identity here in the forest that we could bring out for the benefit of our communities and for our visitors. But I will just reiterate, I really strongly believe in art happening with communities, not to communities. So I think where we can, we'll be looking to get kind of groups of our communities out and getting them creating and designing what's in their spaces and being part of what their place looks like.
Okay.
I think the other thing I would just add is we're working really closely with lots of other teams across the council now, and you're probably beginning to see a lot more things that the different services are considering art on promoting their work and making it more visible for the communities as well. So Keely's done a great job in working with street scene teams and economic development, our planning teams. We're sort of branching out a lot more across all of those services. So they're actually thinking about how they can involve this in the work they're doing as well, which it will obviously have a lot more of a positive benefit for communities and be more aware of it, really.
Okay, thank you everyone for that. Keely, well done. It was a really interesting presentation. It's great to see the enthusiasm that you put into it, and I think it is quite amazing how much we are actually doing across the forest and all the individual projects that are taking place, and the sheer amount of culture and background. But it is an area steeped in all sorts of different types of culture, and we really should be celebrating that, and you're helping us do that. So thank you for the presentation. There is no recommendations for us to make other than, can you please keep up that good work? Thank you. I'll move on now to the highlight of the evening, the portfolio holders reports. I'm going to go to Dan first of all.
Thank you, Chair. Just to touch upon a point that you mentioned a little while ago, I was actually at the launch of the Red Pepper and Black Pepper Indian Army exhibition last Thursday at the Heritage Centre, and it was absolutely fascinating. So if any members or officers get an opportunity to go along, it's really worth it. And I think Angus has done a really good job, as well as everybody involved. Moving on to the actual report, I'm delighted to announce that St George's Hall at Cowshot is now nearing the end of the improvement works, and it will be open to the public very soon. We've publicly said September, but I believe it's going to be earlier. Many of you already know, the project was part funded by the UK government through the Rural England Prosperity Fund, and it's really had an excellent makeover. There's sort of internally, externally, there's going to be a community garden, which is already in the process of coming together. Not only have these works sort of improved the building, but we've also been really careful to retain the original features that sort of gave it the character. So the separate chaplain's room is still intact, and the stained glass windows are still in place. So I'm really pleased about that, and I'm delighted with how that's gone. I just hope the community are going to celebrate having this fantastic new facility. The other thing I wanted to update you all on was it's been a year since our 2 PSPOs came into force across the district. Members will be aware that the Forestry England and National Park Authority rangers, as well as the verderers, are authorised to enforce these orders, who are trained by us. Since implementation, in total, there have been 953 engagements with members of the community, speaking to people who have been seen to breach the order. It was recognised that a majority of those breaching the orders were tourists, and although signage is present, it is only within the Forestry England car parks. Of the engagements, 159 relate to PSPO 1, which is the fire, and 784 relate to PSPO 2, which is the feeding and petting of animals. Of that, only one fixed penalty notice had been issued during this time in conjunction with the police. And members will be aware that education and awareness has been our priority. So the PSPOs have given our partners this opportunity to engage with members of the public when they see the breaches. All authorities have been promoting the PSPOs with multimedia approach. Leaflets have been circulated to the New Forest campsites, and we can capture those audiences at the earliest point of opportunity. The community safety team are going further by approaching hotels and B&Bs this summer to ensure literature is available to their guests, and engagement will continue on this. The Safe in New Forest team had a record number of summer engagement days across the district this year, which include free bike registering sessions. I was delighted to join the team at Fawley Emergency Services Day on Saturday the 25th of May, where there were many positive conversations with residents of all ages. The team were also in attendance at events at New Milton Market, Fordingbridge, Hyde Market, Ringwood, Lymington, and finishing at Tottenham Precinct last week. Each year we host these sessions in the towns and parishes across the district. We are joined by local neighbourhood policing colleagues to engage with residents and visitors on topics such as crime and antisocial behaviour. I was just really glad to see that we've had a really good, and especially with the weather being poor, we've had a really good response to that. Water quality of the beaches managed by NFDC at Barton-on-Sea, Cowshot and Milford-on-Sea have been rated as excellent yet again by the Environment Agency. Leek Beach, which is managed by Hampshire County Council, was also awarded an excellent rating. The Environment Agency samples the water at regular intervals between May and September each year, which are analysed against the European Bathing Water Standards. In May, the River Avon at Fordingbridge was also designated as an inland bathing water by DEFRA, and the classification of water quality at Fordingbridge will be available in May 2025, following a period of monitoring by the Environment Agency. And finally, the food safety team will be at the New Forest show with a stall for children, be a food safety detective, and asking them to spot food safety standards in a fridge that would make their food unsafe. And they'll put on a white coat and hat and identify hazards. So do look out for them if you're attending. That's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. I think that's an interesting portfolio holder update. One thing that amazes me there, 900 odd interventions, and it's good to see the proactivity of that. But the thing that amazed me with the figures, 178, I think you said, something like that, where it was about fire and the barbecues. It just still continues to amaze me that with all the publicity we've had about the change in the climate, the dry environment, that people are still bringing things into this area which could actually cause an absolutely environmental disaster to this special area. And it's good to see we're doing the interventions, but we really do need to demand some more common sense of the people that visit the forest. But that could be quite a hard task, so keep those interventions going. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine won't be quite as interesting as Councillor Poole's. However, just a couple of things I'll mention. They'll be very brief, in fact. You'll probably have heard about the new MRC role. This is the member responsible for complaints, not generating, but for making sure we have a complaints process that is working. The Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman has been given more statutory authority to ensure that complaints handling by landlords follows a new complaint handling code, which is far more strict than has been to date. The member responsible for complaints, the MRC, will be NFDC's Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. And there'll be some, however, I will have the lead responsibility for complaints to support a positive complaint handling culture. And every 2 months, a legal officer will attend my portfolio holder briefing, it'll be Amanda, I think, to ensure that I receive, and I quote, regular updates on the volume, categories and outcomes of complaints alongside complaint handling performance, regular reviews of issues and trends arising from complaint handling, regular updates on the outcomes of Ombudsman investigations and progress made in complying with orders related to severe maladministration findings. As you can see, they're really tightening up now on landlords and their ability to manage complaints effectively. So this will be something that we've already sent in one report, but there will be an annual complaints performance and service improvement report presented to the Cabinet. Now that will be presented by myself and Jeremy Heron, Councillor Heron. Councillor Heron is responsible for corporate complaints management, but I'm responsible for the housing complaints. So that'll be an interesting one. There'll be an interim one at the RAT panel, the Resources and Transformation panel in the autumn. You'll be hearing about that soon, I expect anyway. So that's my new job. I'm looking forward to it.
I really can't think of a better person to be allocated this task. I'm sure the rest of the Cabinet members are delighted with that allocation.
All I'm doing is taking responsibility, Chairman. The officers once again do all the work. However, in terms of the PH, the portfolio holder question I was asked last week at Council by Councillor Jack Davis. He asked me about right to buy and proposing something that you may remember I didn't quite agree with. However, he did ask me a couple of supplementaries, which I didn't answer accurately, completely at the time. He did ask me how many houses do we have, social housing do we have? He mentioned 5,100, and I said, no, it's over 5.2. In fact, the number reported to, would you believe, the regulator of social housing at the end of March was 5,285. So he then also asked me a supplementary to the supplementary. So how many more houses will we be delivering? I'm reasonably confident, and I think we can be quite sure about this. I think you know this too, Chairman. Over the next couple of years, there's likely to be about another 100 added to that. Now, in reality, of course, there could be more, but we just don't know how the market will turn or how opportunities will come. But I know that NFTC is keeping its options open in a number of areas. So right now, I think it's all quite a positive statement. We are moving forward in housing. I did email Councillor Davis earlier today with those numbers, by the way. So I'm sure he'll read it sometime. That's me done.
Thank you. We'll move on now to the work programme. So hand over to Karen to update us on the next work programme.
So the work programme is as detailed with the supplement that was circulated to members. But I just wanted to flag at the end of the work programme the fact that what Steve Davis has just been talking about is that the annual complaints will be combined with housing that will go to the Resources and Transformation panel on the 21st of November. So all members of this panel will be invited to attend that and obviously contribute to the discussion, particularly in relation to the housing stuff.
Another diary date for you, members. I'm sure you'll be thrilled to go to that panel and listen to the complaint figures. It seems one of the highlights of that panel will be there. Do members have any agenda items they wish to add to the programme? Thank goodness for that. In which case, item 11, any other items which the Chairman decides are urgent? I have none, and that brings us, we will meet here again on the date previously notified in September. And thank you all. I think we got through some interesting business tonight, and our presentations were really interesting and all good news. And I congratulated our officers for the work they do. But again, thank you, members, because without you scrutinising and listening to the presentations, we wouldn't be achieving what we do achieve. So I think it's a whole team effort. So thanks to all the members, but not the portfolio holders. They just have to do it.
Thank you, Chair.